Good evening, everyone. So over the weekend, MSNBC canceled Joy Reid's TV show. According to the network, all of her wigs were quickly released back into the wild. There they go. When asked about her future plans, Ms. Reid claims she plans on spending more time with her family, accusing her relatives of racism.
Joy Reid was recently taken to the intellectual woodshed by Gutfeld, who demolished all of her illusions. Gutfeld dismantled her jargon, uncovered her performative outrage, and reduced her entire show into a comedy piece, without a punchline, in a rose so sharp it could cut through cable static. This takedown is your best bet. If you've ever wondered what happens when arrogance and savage wit combine.
And I think that's the way the Trump effect is. I think after Trump won, they just said they're buying oil from America over Russia. I wonder why. The moment the guy wins, all of a sudden, mysterious stuff starts going away. The Latino district that voted for Trump by 75% also voted for Clinton, a huge margin. I guess that's misogyny too. I don't know. I think Joy Reid has completely lost her.
Combined with sarcasm and coffee, Gutfeld approached the studio as if he had just come from a lunch date. A smile, the unmistakable one that promised trouble, mayhem, and a speech headed like a heat-seeking missile was there. Joy Reid, MSNBC's primetime poet of relentless rage and the queen of rolling her eyes so hard they may sprain something. Is the target this time? A cue card was not necessary for Gutfeld. Irony was filled with surgical precision as he built it up with a typical Gutfeld ramp-up. The kind where you can literally hear the gears worry.
Moment for the show. Joy Reid is out. Of course, heartbroken, for she provided this show with more material than a seamstress at The View. on slow news days, it was always there to help with a racist rant.
He depicted Joy Reid as an accidental comedian who worked as a cable news show. In addition to being a journalist and analyst, she had nothing to say. "She's throwing darts in the dark," he said, referring to it as journalism. He shook his head like a disappointed father to a child who had just attempted to microwave aluminum foil. After taking one glance at her nightly servings, Joy would always open her program with a tirade about oppression, fascism, democracy's downfall, and the imminence of the end of the world.
It's not racism, it's not sexism, it's brainism. We are bigoted against people who don't have brains, which is why Joy Reid takes this so personally.
Y'all voted with Stephen Miller and Duke and against your own sisters and chose Kamala Harris with 60% of their votes. So you own everything that happens to your mixed status families and to your wives, sisters, and abuelas from here on in.
Like she was trying out for a Whole Foods parking lot performance of a Shakespearean tragedy. Gutfeld turned her show's beginnings into an interpretative dance of fear-mongering by making wild hand motions and exaggerated gasps to belittle the drama. In some sections of this nation, fascist sentiment is on the upswing, mainly among white men. Then she grew fascinated on race. As Gutfeld noticed, if there were too many white flakes in a bowl of cereal, Joy Reid could detect racial injustice. Climate injustice happened if it rained excessively. It was a racial drought if there was no rain.
Groundswell in parts of this country, mainly among white men. What they're saying is we own this country and everyone will bow down to us.
In America, there's a thing about both white vigilantism and white tears, particularly male white tears.
Now, I don't like to use hyperbole, but Joy's firing is the biggest blow to racists since the Confederacy lost.
Gutfeld teased her that she had a formula. Add racism to everything, shake it up, and serve it with a dash of MSNBC smugness. He didn't even have to come up with half of the absurdity. The heavy lifting was already done by her. He was merely there to make jokes. He went on to analyze her dress selections because they created the idea that she had lost a bed at a junk store owned by enraged.
They blame whiteness for Virginia's election while saying CRT doesn't exist. It makes me miss the Clinton era when the Dems were good at lying. So Cross was filling in for the homophobic blur-turned-pundit Joy Reid, who had said the same thing.
It was education,
Right.
which is code for white parents don't like the idea of teaching about race.
Yes, if there's one thing missing in our educational system, it's America's
Peacocks, not because fashion is essential. Reminiscent of a piñata at a pride parade, Gutfeld leaned into it, emulating the rainbow blasts that periodically caressed her shoulders. The crowd clapped because everything fit, not because they were interested in her attire. Her personas: technicolor, chaos, agitation, and impassioned takes. Then, however, he had surgery, revisionist history, outrageous conspiracy theories, and the never-ending attempts to turn every headline into a racial parable were among Gutfeld's best-known works. The only person who could make a traffic report into a civil rights documentary, he added, was Joy.
So, how could someone named Joy Reid be so joyless and not read? There are countless articles out there on CRE and how often it's being taught in schools. So Joy and Tiff had the same thing, like people who plan to lie often will. It's like MSNBC have only one brain in the freezer, and in the handoff they must have dropped.
She would infer that voter suppression was at play if a squirrel crossed the street too rapidly. She most likely has a dartboard in her dressing room with photographs of the founding fathers for warm-up, he joked. Gutfeld stated her favorite word was dangerous. The manner she used the word, not the word itself. It was all hazardous. Trump constituted a menace. Republicans constituted a threat. Cows are likely lethal as well. She characterized anything that didn't meet her progressive goal as a risk to the nation. Gutfeld described her worldview as an ongoing Marvel film in which she was the last hero standing, battling to defend democracy from a land of gas stoves and suburban dads, but with a microphone in place of a hammer.
Because not only did cable news lose a bigot, but the bigot herself might finally get the round-the-clock care that she really needs. But you gotta wonder how she was able to last this long. The irony, of course, is in her name, for did Joy bring any joy in anyone's life? Oh, I didn't know this was a call and response show.
According to Gutfeld, her rants sounded like someone coughing up jargon after devouring a thesaurus. As if adding seasoning to a political stew, he accused her of using terminology like dog whistle and systemic this or institutional that. Whether the anecdote was about immigration, taxation, or someone sliding on a banana peel didn't matter. Joy succeeded to transform it into a symptom of cultural deterioration. Gutfeld emulated her tone of voice, rhythm, and dramatic pause.
But think about it. I'm willing to bet no one ever said, you know, I was going through a tough period in my life, and listening to Joy Reid really got me through it. If anything, it was their tough periods in life that got them through Joy Reid. But that's the problem with MSNBC and legacy media. Their income was based on making life
pauses. He gave the idea that there was a rainfall sound effect and scary background music accompanying each Joy Reid tune. He claimed that she wasn't reading the news. Only she could see the horror movie she was describing, and she desired theatrics rather than answers. He held his hardest punches for her hypocrisy, yet she thrived on rage like a bug on humidity. During a Trump rally, Gutfeld drew attention to Joy Reid's troubling past, notably pointing up former blog comments that suddenly vanished more swiftly than CNN viewers. Hackers were to fault. Gutfeld laughed until he nearly passed out. He said that hackers didn't care about security clearances or bank accounts. He proceeded after that. He included her persistent morality, saying that she behaved like a progressive priestess.
Put Joy Reid back up there. You know, I was looking at Joy Reid. I'm thinking, you know, my brother-in-law, when we used to go to 49ers, he's a big 49er fan. He used to paint his face, you know, gold and silver. I can tell that Joy Reid is totally in his camp because she's wearing his hair. And I think that's a sign she was going to win. She wanted to be on the winning side. Look at that. That's Trump.
Offering moral counsel like candy on Halloween. As she cashed Comcast checks like clockwork, Gutfeld joked that Joy had made MSNBC into a confessional booth where she absolved herself every day by condemning capitalism. Then the smugness appeared. Joy Reid, according to Gutfeld, had the astonishing ability to sound as though she were delivering a TED Talk to a room full of houseplants. The stance, the elevated eyebrows, the tone, she seemed to be sad that America wasn't more like Brooklyn. He remarked that hearing her talk was like to hearing a barista lecture about oat milk as a political standpoint. He then aired the real-world footage, which never quite matched her grim predictions. It was like observing someone hold a diluted umbrella while shrieking that the sky was falling. He made fun of her for using the word racist to describe everything until it had no significance at all.
Meanwhile, in an interview, border czar Tom Homan called Joy Reid dumber than a box of rocks. The American Geological Society has demanded an apology. So Comcast is getting rid of MSNBC. And as predicted, Joy Reid is already blaming white and white men.
No one is racist if everyone is. Nothing is if everything is white supremacist. She turns every policy talk into a civil rights reenactment and every disagreement into a hate crime. Gutfeld argued, cheapening legitimate causes. Her fans didn't watch for facts, he commented. They watched to be reminded that they were the morally superior, the woke, and the good people. Joy Reid was keeping them in the dark. Through a deluge of self-righteousness, she was baptizing them, and with a flourish, he came full circle, just as it appeared that he may relax. Joy Reid, according to him, was the human equivalent of a Twitter post made by a gender studies major who had a minor in moral panic, despite the fact that most people had already clicked the snooze button on her years before.
Of Latinos who want a tougher border and back Trump big time, giving him historic numbers for a Republican. But instead of dealing with reality, Joy Reid's trying to shame Latino men.
Latino men who, despite the utter disrespect shown by Trump and his promise to deport some of your mixed status families, most of them voted in a 55% majority to make the deportations happen. Y'all voted with Stephen Miller and David Duke, and against your own sister, who chose Kamala Harris with 60% of theirs. So you own everything that happens to your mixed status family.
Before, she was MSNBC's official alarm clock, always trying to wake up America. A Gutfeld classic every time. Perhaps I was being too harsh, he observed. Putting on a serious look and lowering his voice, Joy Reid might have been right. Every speech was a brushstroke of moral panic put on a canvas of cable news hysteria, transforming absurdity into an art form. He wasn't finished. There was more. There was always more. Because the information basically wrote itself in the instance of Joy Reid. The humor was the setup. In Greg Gutfeld's universe, sarcasm was admired, logic was sharp, and Joy Reid was the gift that kept on giving. So he kept going, ready for another round, another jab, another beautifully done roast that would leave audiences smiling and critics spitting. It was no longer commentary. It was performance art that featured glitter and illusion.